we have been talking about multiplying to two binomials to get a trinomial. And today what we're going to do is if I gave you a trinomial, how would you go backwards to get these binomials? And on our test, I gave you a trinomial and one of the binomials you could do backwards box. But what happens if I don't give you either of these? So we're going to talk about the strategy to create that. The first thing you need to do is you need to check for a GCF. Okay, we've done this before. And we need to factor out all of the greatest common factors. So, for example, if I gave you 2x squared plus 2x plus 4, you can see that we have a GCF of 2, so we get x squared plus x plus 2. So you always want to make sure that your trinomial is simplified as much as possible. The second thing you need to pay attention to are the signs. So if the sign of the last term is the term we call c, this is our constant, it does not have a variable. If it is a positive, then that tells you that when you have your two parentheses, it will also, the sign inside both of them will be the same, because we know that a positive times a positive is a positive, but we also know that a negative times a negative is a positive. So these are either going to be both positive or both negative. And the way you do that is by looking at the sign of the middle term. That middle term is what we call b. And that is going to be what determines your signs. So if you have a trinomial, we always write our trinomials in the form of ax squared plus bx plus c. We also call this a quadratic. Okay, where a is always the coefficient of x squared, b is always the coefficient of x, and then c again is your constant. You're going to look at your middle term. Well, this is a positive. So that means that if this is a positive and this is a positive, then our signs are both positive. Okay? In like manner, if your middle term is negative and your constant is positive, well, that means that both of your signs are going to be negative. Because whenever we do FOIL or box, okay, a negative times a negative gives you that positive c term. And we're going to look at that today. We need to ask ourselves, it's almost like a puzzle, what multiplies to give the last term, aka your c or your constant? And signs play a huge role in this, and combines, meaning adds or subtracts, to give that middle term, that b term. Okay, so for example, here you can see that my a is technically 1, b is positive 5, and c is 6. When we were looking at boxes before, this a term, okay, ax squared, is always going to go in the upper left-hand corner. And your c term is always going to go in your bottom right. Okay? So you need to think about a couple of things. Well, what times itself gives you x squared? Well, we know this is x and x. Our middle term is positive, and so is our c term. So both of our signs are going to be positive. So we need to think about what multiplies to give us this c. Well, what multiplies to make 6? 1 and 6, and 2 and 3. So out of those factors, which ones can we add? Because these are both positive. We need this to have a combined like terms of positive 5x. Which ones of these can we add together to get positive 5x? Well, this is 7 and this is 5. So since it's 2 and 3, that means this is a 2x, a positive 2x, and this is a positive 3x, because together they make that 5x. Then we can fill in the missing pieces. X times what is 2x? 2. X times what is 3x? 3. So my binomials are x plus 2 and x plus 3. So signs play a huge, huge role in this, so be very cautious there. In this example, okay, here's our ax squared, here's our c. But I want you to notice that this is a minus and this is a plus. So this means that they are the same, but they're going to both be negative. So we have x times x is x squared, and then I have a negative and a negative. And whatever I get when I collect like terms right here needs to be a negative 5x. So again, what are the factors of 6? 1 and 6 and 2 and 3. And they're both going to be negative. So a negative 1 and a negative 6 is a negative 7. A negative 2 and a negative 3 is a negative 5. Well, that's what we wanted. So this becomes negative 2x, negative 3x, and then we can complete the puzzle. 2 times, or negative 2 times x is negative 2, and x times a negative 3 is negative 3x. So our binomials are x minus 2 and x minus 3. Now we also call these our factors. We can take these factors and we can set them equal to 0 to find our roots, which we're going to talk about when we do our activity in class today. On the back, rule number 3 says, okay, what happens when the sign of the last term is negative? So what if that c, or that constant, is negative? Well, then that means that the sign inside the two parentheses are always, no matter what the sign of the b, are going to be different. The sign of the middle term goes with the larger absolute value, meaning the distance from 0. So we're not going to look at the sign, we're just going to go with the larger factor without the sign. So in this case, we're still asking us almost the same questions. We're saying, actually it is the same question. What multiplies to give the last term, aka the c, or the constant? And what combines, meaning adds or subtracts, and in this case, when it's a negative c, then it is going to be negative, or subtracting, to give the middle term, that b term. So, if we look at these two examples, x squared plus bx minus c, and ax squared minus bx minus c. These are going to be different. The signs are different because the c is negative. Okay? We want our middle term to be positive or negative, and we're going to have to think about those key pieces. So, still, another example, right? X squared. Now this is a minus 6. So we know, well, x times x is x squared. That's not a problem. Because this is different, we're going to have a positive term and a negative term. So we're going to have to figure out what, when we subtract, needs to give us a positive 5x. So again, what multiplies to give us the constant? What multiplies to give us 6, 1 and 6, and 2 and 3. And then we need 5. And we know that they're different. So we're going to have to subtract these. Well, 1 minus 6 is negative 5, but 6 minus 1 is 5. That's what we want. This doesn't work. Negative 2 and a positive 3 is positive 1. Negative 3 and a positive 2 is negative 1. That one's not going to work. So you have to be real careful. If we want a positive 5, then that means the 6 is going to be positive. Negative 1x. This gives us this 5x that we wanted. And then x times what is 6x? Positive 6. X times what is negative 1x? Negative 1. So our factors are x plus 6 and x minus 1. And you can write those in either order. Our last example has our b term negative and our c term negative. X squared minus 6. So again, this negative tells us our signs are different. So I'm going to have a positive and I'm going to have a negative. And this tells us that it needs to be, when we collect like terms, needs to be a negative 5x. So what makes 6? 1 and 6 and 2 and 3. They're going to have to be different. So no matter how I subtract these, I end up with a positive or a negative 1. That's not going to work. But if I subtract these, I can get 5, but I need a negative 5, so that means 6, which is bigger, needs to be the negative. So I have negative 6x, and I have a positive 1x. It doesn't matter where you put those, but it does matter on your signs for your factors. So I can say x times what is negative 6x. Negative 6x times positive 1x gives us our negative 5. So it's x plus 1, x minus 6. And that's what we're going to practice with today in class.